Hey there, my friends. It's Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, and I want to welcome you back to another episode here on the Fit Father Project and the Fit Mother Project podcast. Today, we have a great guest, Ken Swartz, who is the founder and chief science officer at C60 Purple Power, which is a company that makes a very unique and powerful supplement called C60, also known as fullerene. And we're going to get into what this is because you probably haven't ever heard of it. But as Ken has dedicated his life to looking at this, especially based on his scientific background. He believes that this is one of the most important compounds that we can take for health, for longevity, as a master antioxidant, and just for aging and living well. So we're going to really explore what C60 is. And in this conversation, we're going to go to some places. We're going to talk a little bit, some chemistry, some biochemistry, and even, I guess you could even say some cosmology about where this comes from on a really deep level. And I think that's going to make this a fun and intellectually stimulating conversation. And even if you don't remember back to any of the stuff you learned in your high school science classes, I think you'll be able to follow along because Ken's very good at explaining this. So Ken, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you being here.
Glad to be on.
So you're a science guy, and I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your background in terms of what you were doing beforehand and how you got into starting a company around a very particular compound. You're not selling vitamin C, you're selling C60. So what were you into beforehand and how'd you get here?
Well, my little C60 journey started. I was working on a metal oxygen fusion reactor project. I was running it, and there was a lot of late doctors and dead professors kind of associated with it. And I didn't want my team or myself to end up like that. So I went out looking for another radiation protectant. And I came across this stuff called carbon 60, C60 for short. And C60 is a molecule of 60 carbon atoms shaped exactly like a little soccer ball. And they had some interesting studies of radiation. They gave, one set of rats got C60. The other set, the control group, didn't get any. They exposed them to a fatal dose of radiation. Pretty much all the C60 rats live, where the control group, of course, immediately died. And when I had learned about that, I got a couple sources of C60 and for my crew and myself to take. And we're all still around, so that worked for that. And but I kept taking it even after the experiment was over because I had like a little bit more energy. I think my, that afternoon blage you get when you eat lunch and sometimes you want to take a nap, that went down. And but what really kind of was unexpected is about 7 months after I started using C60, I went to see my optometrist. And my DRUs, or dry macular degeneration, which I'd had for years and was progressing, had completely disappeared. And that astonished my optometrist because he'd actually never seen that happen in his many decades of practice.
Wow. I mean, that's super cool. And I want to recap for people. So you were basically doing, not that I understand this truly, but some kind of like energy, nuclear fusion stuff. And then the products you were using kick off radiation that would cause cancer and different products. So you found C60 as a way to mitigate the radiation effects. And then you're like, wow, actually this has further reaching health effects.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it was. Because, there are just so many people that had done the same research, weren't around anymore. Mm-hmm. And it was some diseases commonly associated with radiation exposure. But it's research, so you don't really know what you do. So you have to really cover yourself. But in the meantime, after I learned about what happened to me, my electrical engineer on the job, Gary Rodriguez, he had type 2 diabetes. They kind of go together. And so he had to develop severe wet macular degeneration, so bad his career as an engineer might have to come to an end because, his vision is going away. Yeah. So I made a preparation of C60 and MCT coconut oil. And people listening, MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides, and your liver can turn those into ketones very rapidly, which is, and then your cells can use those ketones as a flex fuel. So if you can't get some glucose into your cells, they certainly can do ketones, and your cells can keep running. And so that's why I put it in MCT oil. And he used a tablespoon of C60 and MCT oil for about a year, and a little over a year, and his wet macular degeneration, which was much worse than mine, completely went away as well. And his type 2 diabetes went subclinical.
Wow.
It didn't go away, but he didn't need any more medications. He still has to exercise and watch his weight, but the other stuff went away.
That's so cool. I mean, really promising. And I'm actually, I'm not of the age where I have macular degeneration, but I do have nearsightedness. And I definitely am thinking a lot about my eyes as I've gotten older. I know my night vision's getting worse. So anything that can help with eyes is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I want to take a step back into the chemistry because I think it's important for people to understand. This is carbon, which is the basis of like biological life. We say we're carbon-based organisms. A lot of biological structures are made from carbon, and a lot of things are made from carbon. So the graphite and graphene are made of carbon. Diamonds are made of carbon, and it's just that they're arranged in particular ways. And when we see this particular, what its aggregate of what it is, it could look like a diamond, or it could be a microscopic soccer ball in the case of this C60. So why is this shape so special? And like, what about it? And like, let's get into it. It's like a perfect sphere of carbon. So that's like kind of significant.
Yeah, that's exactly its secret. We'll probably get into more of the chemistry. A little history of it. It was discovered in 1985. It solved the long-standing mystery in astronomy. And then it got a Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1996. But it was still pretty hard to make. Only, it was pretty expensive, hard to make. And so it wasn't until the early 2000s that it was being tested, primarily for toxicity. Because here's a molecule that's been discovered in outer space and proved to be on Earth, but what happened was they found that it actually increased the lifespan of test animals by 90%. And that kind of started the whole thing with C60. It's and there's the radiation studies, and they've had a lot of others. And what C60 is, it's a very powerful antioxidant. It's pretty selective. It only interacts with superoxide, and that's the most damaging oxidative radical in the body. But it's also one of the main oxidative radicals produced by the mitochondria, and it also neutralizes the hydroxyl ion. That's basically a water molecule missing its proton. That's usually what's created in radiation, by the way. And so that's all it does. Those two molecules, the two most damaging oxidative radicals in the body. Oxidative radicals basically your body rusting. So imagine, oxygen with an extra electron. Well, yeah, it's going to cause some super rust. And then, water missing a proton, that does the same thing. And what's key is it doesn't interfere with any of the body's signaling molecules, because the body has a lot of signaling molecules, which are oxidative radicals, like nitrogen oxides. That's what vasodilator, that dilates your capillaries or shrinks them. That's really super important. And then there's also hydrogen peroxide. Technically, it's not an oxidative radical, but it is an oxidizer. And also there's some others based around sulfur, iron, and zinc that your body uses to, communicate with it. And so that's, so sometimes if you've already heard people take too much antioxidants, you can have problems, like with vitamin E or vitamin C, because if you take too much, then it starts interfering with some of those signaling pathways, and then that can cause problems with your cells. But C60 doesn't do that. They've actually done some testing, to see what level is C60 toxic, because there's all kinds of beneficial effects beyond what we just discussed. And they took it all, most of it's at 0.1 milligram per kilogram of body weight. And they took testing up to all the way to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, which is 10,000 times a health beneficial dose. And even at that level, there was no toxicity in test animals. If you tried to do that with vitamin E, you would have dead rats. So C60 is perfectly safe. Above a certain level, maybe a tablespoon or two a day, you're probably not going to gain additional benefit, but you don't have to worry about it having toxic downstream effects.
That's really cool. And I want to go back and kind of simplify this in terms of the antioxidant picture so people understand, because we hear these terms being thrown out all the time. And unless you understand some chemistry, it just kind of seems like woo-woo. But basically, oxidative products, so oxidative compounds are compounds that have an unpaired electron or a hungry electron out on the surface of it, and they bump into things and they cause problems. They cause a cascade of reactions and further damage. And we see this with like our DNA, things that create oxidative stress on the body in like a not good way. It could be radiation, it could be bad fats in certain kinds of foods that we ingest, environmental toxins. Like when that damages our DNA, this is like affecting our life long term. It's raising cancer risk, et cetera. And what C60, along with vitamin C and E do, is they're able to neutralize those damaging compounds by donating or recycling electrons to kind of make them stable. And you mentioned specifically that there was a couple key oxidative compounds that our bodies naturally produce through metabolism, like mitochondria in our cells is working. Things are happening. We naturally produce some of these oxidative products. It's just our body has systems to neutralize them, and C60 happens to do that incredibly well and does it very specifically, where it doesn't like interfere with these other beneficial signaling compounds. Like, for example, when you exercise, your mitochondria are ramped up. you're creating more oxidative products, but those are actually beneficial. That's what we know. You don't want to like squash that post-workout signaling inflammation because it's beneficial. C60 works in a very specific way, so it doesn't do that. So I've heard that it's very good for athletes and people training for that purpose. Can we speak into that a little bit?
Well, yeah, because it doesn't interfere with the body's signaling molecules, you can take athletes can take it. And usually they take it with the MCT oil because if you MCT, so that gives you a quick energy boost because those MCTs turn to ketones, and then the C60 helps reduce the oxidative burden, especially when you're exercising. So your lactic acid buildup is delayed, and also DOMS is delayed because a lot of DOMS is caused by a chemical called peroxynitrite.
Yeah.
And that's basically when a superoxide hooks up with a nitrogen oxide, it makes this oxidative radical that can travel. A lot of oxidative radicals, they react really quickly. Well, peroxynitrite can get out of your cells and go all over the place. And that gives you the soreness that you see a couple of days afterwards, and so it kind of reduces some of the oxidative damage before it happens. And that's really the key. But also like superoxide is also used by your neutrophils. That's a special type of white blood cell, and it uses superoxide as kind of like bullets to take out bacteria.
Right.
And which is a good thing. But a lot of times, for instance, when you have autoimmune conditions like arthritis, it thinks there's something in there, and it's shooting these bullets around, damaging body's own cells. So if you get C60 in there, that kind of autoimmune situation, it can reduce the inflammation caused by that kind of thing.
Cool. And how long have you been personally taking C60 to date?
About 2014 is when I originally started that.
So almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
The experiment was happening in 2013. It was one of those. And the company's been around since about 2016. Because after all the stuff that we discovered with C60, and there's all kinds of other benefits that C60.
Yeah, let's talk about those. I'd love to hear some of them.
And it was kind of, remember C60 is only really learning about it. And they did the study where it extended animal lifespan. The rats lived a really long time, like 5.5 years. So they were, let's say the last couple of rats actually had an accident. So they could publish, but some other people were smarter and they used mice, which have a much shorter lifespan. And not only C60 extended their lifespan, but it also prevented cognitive decline due to aging. So that didn't happen. And these mice, by the way, and rats they're kind of like modeled. They're special hybrids that are kind of like modeled to resemble human aging, the sort of things that we would have. And like the first human uses of C60 actually was put in a cream for Japanese women, and they found that applied topically to the face reduced lines and wrinkles in Japanese women. And they did another where it was applied to scalp, and they found that C60 increases hair growth. But anyone that takes C60 knows that because your nails and hair grow much faster, which is a benefit. Now, people didn't really know why it was doing this, but I'll kind of tell another story here. And they did a study where they gave rabbits arthritis. And of course, C60 being anti-inflammatory, they would figure it would help, and that's what they did. They injected the C60 into the rabbit's joints, and the inflammation from the arthritis went way down, and which was expected, and that's what they thought. But then when they actually examined the joints later, they found that the cartilage had actually regrown.
Nice.
And so the story, and then that went on to more research, and basically what they find out that C60, if we have senescent cells in our body. And these are basically, they have damaged DNA, or the DNA is too short to reproduce.
Yeah.
And, usually nature, there's processes called apoptosis that take those cells out and replace them. But a lot of them, they just don't go away. And so to avoid, usually the processes that destroy them happen during regular cellular chemistry. So to avoid dying, those cells go into a fermentation process. We run on oxygen to the mitochondria. Yep. Fermentation is like a primitive, backwards things.
Yep.
And cancer also runs off fermentation. And and so these cells, they're using way more energy because it's so inefficient. But they're also putting out toxic products. Fermentation makes all kinds of toxic products besides alcohols. And so what happens is when C60, and by the way, the way that the cells force themselves to go into fermentation, they stop providing antioxidants to the mitochondria, especially like superoxide dismutase.
Yeah.
Catalase and CoQ10 and glutathione. These things go away. The cells, bigger cell stops producing them. So the mitochondria are forced to go into fermentation too to survive. So we just have a toxic cell here. Well, because C60 is a SOD catalase mimic. When it gets into those senescent cells, it basically restarts the Krebs cycle or restarts the production of ATP, which is the way our cells are supposed to be. And then those mitochondria will send messages to the nuclear DNA, like the headquarters. And when you're in a senescent cell, they will not get the right message back. That's why it's a senescent cell. And so when they don't get that right message back, the mitochondria themselves will basically explode, cause apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. So when you take C60, it causes massive apoptosis of senescent cells, which is, first off, these cells are just draining a whole bunch of energy from your body. They're like zombie cells. Secondly, they're poisoning the cells around them and your body in general from the toxic chemicals they're producing. So getting rid of those is a great idea. But what happens is soon your tissue or organ doesn't have enough cells to do the job or needs more cells. And it sends out messages to the stem cells. And stem cells are like baby cells, right? They haven't decided what they want to be. So it causes those stem cells to multiply to very large amounts. And then those stem cells can convert to whatever tissue type. It could be, a muscle cell, it could be a skin cell. And that's actually what was happening with the Japanese women. Because there was now more stem cells in their skin, when the skin turns over, they have more cells. And so that's why the fine lines and wrinkles, because the underlying base of the skin was thicker and stronger, had more cells, and wrinkles and fine lines went away.
That's powerful, what you just shared. And I mean, we preach here inside Fit Father and Fit Mother so much about fasting as a good way, and exercise as well, to increase autophagy and get that cell turnover. This is one of the only things that I've heard of that can really initiate this process like very directly through its nature as a mechanism. And that's amazing. And I know people are starting to get this message that the health of your mitochondria and the youth of your cells is effectively your health span and your lifespan. So keeping those things as fired up as possible is amazing. And so
we see people, long-term users of C60, actually they have increases in telomere length for the test.
Nice.
But it's not because obviously, C60 is an antioxidant, so it's going to slow down, the shortening of telomeres. But what's really going on is those senescent cells usually have really shortened telomeres. That's why they're senescent cells. And so they get wiped out and they're replaced with stem cells, which have almost a full set of telomeres. So because when you're taking that, usually it's the cheek swab or something. Yeah. And when you're taking that, they're averaging telomere length of hundreds or thousands of cells. And so on average, telomere length in your body has increased. And so that's why you'll see long-term users of C60 have increased telomere length.
Nice. Is there a particular kind of nutrition protocol you believe that pairs well with this? Is it a lower carb kind of plan, or does it not really matter when you take your C60? Do you take it empty stomach? I know it's in fat itself. Like, can you talk about some of those considerations if someone were interested in taking it? Like, how and when did they take it, and do they time certain nutrients with it?
Well, personally, I have been doing this for a while. I do intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And I mean, I'll just say, I do a pitch for intermittent fasting. I tried all kinds when I was younger. I gained a little too much weight. Probably drank a little too much beer and stuff, like that. So I had tried all kinds of fastings, this type, the 3 whites, no sugar, flour, corn, all this stuff. And, you go down to a certain level and you get stuck. But with intermittent fasting, I punched right down through that level, and I'm a few pounds over my high school weight.
Nice.
I could be a little bit tighter, but I'm not exactly a purist, so there's a little slack there. But so I really encourage people to try intermittent fasting. It's the only thing. And I also think that intermittent fasting increases my energy levels, my mental focus. It's just in and of itself, intermittent fasting is a great protocol to do. Now, if you're a woman, you got to be careful. There's a different way for women to intermittent fast than men, but I would encourage that. So usually I break my fast with some C60 and oil.
Okay, nice. And when do you break your fast? Just out of curiosity, like, what does the schedule look like for you?
I usually do it. I'm usually like 1 o'clock.
Okay.
1:30, because there's other people that do this, but sometimes you go out to lunch with people, you kind of have a life. And so what I do is I just kind of cycle it so that I can go to do the lunch, the business lunch, wherever with people. And that's when I'll break the fast. And then I have like an early dinner.
Yeah, like 2 meals fasting C60 at the end of the fast. It's cool. Would there be Any benefit of taking C60 like straight up in the morning and allowing it to be active during that time, or does
Oh
it
yeah,
like,
there's some people that do that, and actually is a good thing even when you're fasting. If you're doing that, well, I don't know if it's I would recommend doing it in the MCT coconut oil.
for sure?
Those, the MCTs, those medium chain triglycerides, are going to be turned into ketones, and you're
Yeah.
in ketosis. Now you're not going to break
Yeah.
out of ketosis when you're taking ketones. So some of the people use that in their tea or their coffee in the morning, and that would be a really good one not to break ketosis with, and which is you don't want to do if you're trying to do intermittent fasting. I'm on the 4 to 6 hour plan.
Yeah. That's
Somewhere
good.
between low, and then the next step. But sometimes if you're bad, then I'll do like a one meal a day to
Yeah.
bring up for it.
To clean up. Yeah.
And you don't have to be pure on anything. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like C60 takes somewhere between 4 to 10 days to cycle through your body and wash out.
Yeah.
So if you miss a day, it's not a big thing, right? You just make a little bit more the next day.
Hey, it's Dr. Ray. I want to quickly pause this episode to thank you for listening to this Fit Father podcast. I am just blown away at how amazing this podcast has become. I had no idea when I started FFP around 10 years ago that it would grow into such an impactful mission. And I want to let you know that I am so grateful to be connected to you in this lifetime. And on behalf of me and my entire team, we are so grateful to be in your life, helping you get and stay healthier for your family. That's what I want to share. Just some gratitude from my heart to yours. Let's get back to today's episode.
And I want to ask you, I guess exactly what I was going to ask you next is about like the metabolism of it. Like, how is C60 metabolized? How is it excreted? And this is more just for like my general curiosity and knowledge. I don't know if people listening are going to care as much, but what's the breakdown pathways of this?
Well, C60 has no solubility in water.
Okay.
Virtually none. And so it has to be dissolved it's nonpolar. It has to be dissolved in a nonpolar substance, which
So
is...
does it go into bile? Does it get into the bile and get dumped that way?
Yes, actually, you're right. And it also is excreted out of the kidneys.
Yeah.
A little bit out of the kidneys. So that's kind of goes. So it goes in the oil, gets into your body. It's uptaken through your body, goes through all the tissues because it's going in through the intestines. And then the cells, it passes the gut barrier, obviously. It passes the blood-brain barrier. And the cells take it up through endocytosis, and the mitochondria know how to use it. They literally pull it up. And the fact is that C60 does, like, when you're dealing with superoxide, which is the most damaging oxidative radical in the body, the mitochondria make much of it. Mitochondria have SOD, superoxide dismutase, and they'll turn that superoxide into a hydrogen peroxide. Then catalase turns that hydrogen peroxide, I think, back into water and oxygen.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of how the cycle. C60 doesn't do that. C60 is unique in all of chemistry, is that it takes hydrogen, positive hydrogen ions, or sometimes hydrogen gas from the environment and stores it inside of its cage-like structure.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it positively charged. The superoxide, which is negatively charged, sticks to it. And it literally just steals the electron from the superoxide, gives it to one of the positive hydrogen ions, turning it into turning it into a hydrogen
Hydroxyl?
gas.
Yeah.
And then it just releases that oxygen to go back into the Krebs cycle.
Okay.
And then it just pulls another hydrogen ion from the thing. And then the mitochondria, what actually goes on is it goes to the outer membrane, which has a lot of positive hydrogen ions, fills up, heads toward the inner membrane, and along the way, it neutralizes superoxides, right? Until it runs out of those hydrogen ions. Then superoxides will stick to it, making it negatively charged, 2 of them will. And then it goes back to the outer membrane where it neutralizes them, refills. And so you get hundreds of thousands of these little guys bouncing around inside your mitochondria, just moderating that charge level just enough so that your oxidative burden is... it's actually, there's some evidence that C60 was the original antioxidant of life billions and billions of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that the early cells came up with 2 enzymes to do what C60 used to do.
Yeah.
That's a whole other discussion that would take another hour, so we won't go there. So that's why it has no toxicity at the level, doesn't interfere with any body's signaling molecules, and why the mitochondria know how to use it.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I mean, even if someone doesn't fully understand that whole chemistry process, the simple thing is it basically works on the mitochondria's natural pathways, makes it work so much more efficiently, works in line with the mitochondria's natural antioxidant and oxidant capacities, and just makes it all work better. And it's so cool that it's a sphere and it gets to carry things inside of it. And like his geometry is like the basis of all of our structures that we see as physical, right? So I think it's amazing that it is the sphere. And we know, like, if you look into space and just like, we're now talking a little bit more like natural law or like sacred geometry, like 360 degrees, very important, spherical shape. It happens to be carbon. atomic number, is it 12 or 6 or 12? But yeah,
it's 12. Yeah. And the thing is, it's also very localized. It's got 12 pentagons and 20 hexagons, and between the pentagons and hexagons, there's a double carbon bonds there.
Yeah.
So all the chemistry is very specific.
Yeah.
It's very localized. It's not like generalized over the surface, like a catalytic surface. So that's all where the action goes on there. And so it's just amazing that I mean, it's totally unique, and there's nothing else like it. And also, it doesn't burden the body's chemistry. You can just pull another hydrogen ion from the environment, which spontaneously happens, stored inside of its cage-like structure. Mm-hmm. And it also will store hydrogen gas that it pulls and then releases that. You can use that in dealing with oxidative radicals. And so it's just amazing. And the key thing is your mitochondria. That's the ATP. That's where your ATP. That's also where your pregnenolone's made, the precursor molecule for all the hormones. And like, for instance, my macular degeneration was cured, basically. It's still perfect today. I go in the optometrist, I just have perfect. They're still amazed. But that's part of the brain. So any tissue type that has a lot of mitochondria. The number one I actually discovered was it's the cells of the endocrine system actually have more mitochondria than nerve cells, because nerve cells have a whole lot. And so, and then also muscle cells, of course, especially the heart, have a lot of mitochondria. So those type of tissue types with a lot of mitochondria are really, the key things where C60 works. And until C60 came along, it's what they call an SOD catalase mimic, because it's not the same, but it does the job of them. And, mitochondria in the Krebs cycle, you got 4 basic antioxidants that are super critical. You got CoQ10, right? We can supplement for that. And anybody out there who's got a little gray hair should be supplementing with CoQ10. Okay, then there's glutathione. C60 does the job of glutathione in taking care of the hydroxyl ion. Yep. Usually glutathione does that job, but C60 does it. And so actually people's glutathione levels rise when they take C60.
Yeah.
Because C60 is doing that job. Glutathione's got a dozen of other jobs to do. That's just one job. So C60 takes care of that big job. So what glutathione you got will go somewhere else. And you can actually supplement now with glutathione. They have some liposomals that will get past the gut, and so I don't know how effectively they're taken up into all the tissue types, right. But at least, there's something there. But there hasn't been anything for superoxide dismutase, SOD, and catalase. Nothing. And they've done some stuff with like precursor amino acids, the build up, but that's really slow, not very effective.
Yeah.
But with C60, it goes in right away and starts working. And that's key, because there's a lot of people, there's certain genetic alleles. I recommend people also, I did it with a DNA company, but there's others, to get like a DNA testing, because you can learn a lot. But there's some people that have like alleles that cause a reduction in SOD production, especially as they age.
Right.
Until C60, there was nothing. In fact, the head of the DNA company had that problem. So there was nothing that C60 could do, or that you could do about SOD depletion as you get older, until C60 came along. And so it's like a mimic. So it could cover that gap, but we never had anything. And so a lot of our practitioners and doctors like it because it fills that little gap. It's not only thing C60 does, but mitochondria dysfunction is such a problem.
For sure.
As you talk about, all the EMF radiations, which are just, cooking, all the chemistry going on in the mitochondria.
Yeah, well, let's go there now. I want to like, in the time we have remaining, let's make a pit stop on EMF, because it's a different spectrum from the radiation you were getting, which probably X-rays or gamma rays coming off, those kinds of things. But this is just like microwaves that we're getting from our phones and our routers and stuff like this. How does C60 help with that scenario? And also, if you can, in your own words, kind of summarize what you know to be true about how EMFs are damaging to the body.
Well, for years and years, EMFs are, those are like radio waves, right? And they said, they don't heat up the body's tissues so much, so they can't be causing any damage, right? Well, what they found out, for instance, 5G and some of the router frequencies, they'll jam open voltage-gated channels in your cells.
Yep. Okay,
that causes primarily calcium to leak in. Yep. That's the worst offender, not the only one. And that causes massive amounts of oxidation.
Yep.
The nasty superoxides and hydroxyl ions. And so if you have C60, it can, help reduce that damage. Of course, not getting the radiation in the first place is really important. And, there's clothing and there's paints and all kinds of things you could put in your house. And, not putting your phone against your head. Oh, yeah. Not good. You can put it on speakerphone, be here. Or use wires or something. It's, Yeah, it's so you could do that, and so that's where C60 can protect it. And then also, big people don't know EM radiation. When your proteins have to fold up like origami, and if you have a heavy EMF radiation, it will actually interfere with the protein folding, and they'll misfold, and now that protein's worthless because once it misfolds, it can't really be refolded, and so that causes a huge burden because it's causing maybe that protein is now toxic. Yeah. It's certainly got to be cleaned up. That's a whole garbage can problem, and take a lot of energy to that, and then you don't have the protein you need to get the job done. So I mean, avoiding EMF radiation as much because we're experiencing billions of times more, billions and billions of times more than our ancestors did. I mean, 200 years ago, it was it
was a fraction of what we had today, 10%
exactly.
even less, but nothing in these frequency bands that we're putting out now. So yeah, I mean, this is another toolkit in the tool case to keep you healthy on many levels. So that's really cool to hear. All right, so if people look on the market of C60, it's not something that can be patented because it's a naturally occurring thing. It wasn't discovered by a pharmaceutical company. It was found on stars and our bodies can use it. So what is the process of a consumer looking at C60? Like, what do they need to know in terms of like buying if they're interested in trying? What types of products? Obviously, your brand, shopc60.com is great. We'll have lots of links in the show notes for that. And I've been taking it and I really enjoy it. I have it here in the avocado oil and I used up the MCT one. So very good. But tell us about like what should a discerning customer know about C60 if they're going to go and look and buy stuff?
Well, what happened to the C60 market, really when it first started, it was very small. Everybody made a quality product for their customers because they and their families use it, right? Then it became popular, blew up just like the CBD or other markets. We have all these fly-by-nighters. So there's basically three things you want to look for in a C60 product. First, you want sublimated C60. And usually that's like 99.99%, which we use, or 99.98%. It's just pure by its nature because sublimation, for those sleeping chemistry class, is the cousin of evaporation. It's when a solid turns into a gas, then back into a solid. And you do that in a sublimator, and that's how you get sublimated C60. A lot of C60 products out there are purified through using a solvent called methylbenzene toluene. That's a known carcinogen. Probably don't want that in your product. So you always want to look for sublimated. And also that the purity, if you're getting like, because sublimation always makes like 99.998 or 999, right? It's just the nature. But so if there's a lot of people out there with 99.9% pure C60. That is going to be a solvent-based process. Because what they do is they'll dissolve, the C60 will dissolve in the solvent, and then they have to bake off the solvent.
Yeah.
And you have to go through multiple levels of baking it off to get it down. And it costs a lot to do that. Of course, sublimation costs the most of all. So a lot of cheaper prices, like a 99.9% pure C60 that's come from a solvent, is a lot less expensive than a 99.99% from a solvent, which is probably still pretty good, but it's still a little bit of solvent there. So you can get like low quality C60, low quality, which has a lot of solvent left in it. And you don't want that in your diet. And also, there's other people out there that don't have any C60 in their product, or they'll have like charcoal C60. Like in the burnt wick of your candle is about 0.25% C60. But you'd have to eat, close and cuploads of burnt wicks of candles to get enough C60. It would be unpleasant. So one of the things we do is we have a QR code on it. We're going to put it on the bottle someday, and then you can actually go to a web page. It'll take you to a web page where you can actually see our before. After we make the product, it goes out for testing for purity and for C60 concentration. And we also have some of the oils because we use the Goldilocks of oils. That's another thing. Oils that are like long lasting and stable and healthy for you. Because there's people out there that use like canola oil or sunflower oil or soybean oil to dissolve stuff in, like C60. And those are those PUFAs, right? Yeah. They cause massive inflammation. And that's one of the reasons the biggest health problems people have today is that all those oils that they're really high in omega-6s. They cause massive inflammation. And you really should not have them in your diet at all. And even though they're in everything, you have to that's another reading the labels thing, and don't get me on that. So we have it in like the Goldilocks of oils. We have it in olive oil. People have been using olive oil for thousands of years. It's got a nice omega-3, omega-6 balance. Yep. And olive oil was kind of a sensitive digestive system. Yeah. So I started putting it for myself. I put it in avocado oil because that's perhaps one of the easiest to digest oils. And then the other, of course, was my friend Gary. I put it in the MCT coconut oil because if you're glucose processing issues or you're an athlete, that's probably what you want to do. And we have our new gummies, which
they're good.
Only
I've eaten a lot of them. They're actually really
delicious.
They're
very tasty. You only need about 2 of these in the morning. You should take your C60 in the morning and take it really late at night. It can kind of keep you up. So yeah, that tends to be but it has good compliance with kids and older people like that. And we have a few other things. We have like an edible massage oil, C60 Sexy, and just recently we have 2 products. We have an anti-gravity serum, which is for the face, and then we have a youthful eye serum you put up under your eyes.
Nice.
Those are 2 new cosmetics that just actually last week I think they came on.
Cool.
On our website. So we just kind of just mentioning that. But so those are the things and that you want to look for. You want to look for sublimated, 99.99% pure. You want to look for a good, healthy oil. And, one also maybe you can get tested out so that you can, it's safe and effective. Because, people say a lot, well, we have third-party testing that verifies what we have in our product. It's just, there's actually other companies out there that do the same as we do. They're never video, but they do because, they were the originals because they, care about their customers. It's just these fly-by-nighters got in there. It's like the CBD market and all these other markets. These days you have to read the labels. You have to verify that, you're getting the product in there. And unfortunately, in just regular food products as well. It's just something that we have to do in today's world. And with that, that's why we want to make sure we can give a safe and effective product for our customers because we and our families use it ourselves.
Love it. I definitely stand by that. And your products are really high quality from packaging to the oils themselves. They smell good. I've been enjoying it. So that's shopc60.com. It'll be in the show notes as well. If someone wants to take this, how long should they take it to see some effects? I'm sure some people experience immediate effects. Other people probably builds. Is there what would you suggest for a first timer to take it for a period of time to be is this really moving the needle for me? Am I experiencing a difference?
I'd probably take an 8-ounce bottle. Get an 8-ounce bottle because that's about a month, a little bit over a month there. And depending on your age, for instance, for most people, if you're in your 30s, she could probably get away with, a teaspoon and a half. When you get gray hair, your antioxidant levels are down, you're older. Right. So you need to take more. If I was in my 30s, I might take a teaspoon or 2. Mm-hmm. And if I'm just regular, now I take a tablespoon and a half. Sometimes I take more depending on, if I'm doing athletics or performance athletics. So that's it's pretty much that. Somewhere between a teaspoon and a tablespoon, depending on your age and weight. Our website has a little guide on how you might want to do that. Gummies, it's about either 1 or 2 a day. Mm-hmm. They, for some reason, they're very effective at the absorption process of the C60s. It's much better with the gummies. We're not sure why, but it does. It just pops right in there. And what you'll do is you'll notice more energy, mental focus. Usually the first couple of weeks, you'll start noticing that just because that's when you're ramping up. But there's a lot of for instance, my macular degeneration. I went into the eye doctor in 7 months, and that's when it went away. Gary, it took a little bit over a year because he had wet matter. He was under he was going in all the time. Yeah. So he get progressive pictures of it, and it took a little bit over a year. So. Basically, if you have a long-term problem, we've had a lot of people that have, they had Hashimoto's and they had zero production. They had to take medicine, but over a year or 2, they could get off to half the medicine to 3/4. And we think a lot of that has to do with the senescent cells getting wiped out and then replaced by stem cells. These stem cells can now work, and that's a key thing. So if you've had a process that you've had a problem that's taken a while. It's going to take a while with the C60. Some things though are great. If you get a sunburn especially, we have the C60 Sexy as a nice little applicator, and you can just put it over the sunburn, and the swelling and pain will go down. C60, you rub it on your joints if they got arthritis, then you get the pain goes down pretty quickly, but it won't burn or peel. That's what happens after you put it on. And so especially burns and stuff, I've burned myself now, or get a mosquito bite, I could put the C60 on it, and the itching goes away in about 30 minutes. So that's just that's the, and of course topical abuse. I'm a guy. I don't do the early skincare like I should, though they're training me. But for women or something, it's C60 is just really good at or that, it won't happen overnight, but if you apply topically, religiously for a couple of months, you will see definite improvement. And there's scientific evidence on that. Some other things, C60 and in the human stuff, there's a website called whatisc60.org. It's a 501c3. We support it, and some other good C60 companies support it, because we can only talk about human studies, human-based studies on our website. So, but this whatisc60.org has the human, the animals. There's a couple industry hit pieces. For instance, particles of C60 have no benefit. They have no health benefit. C60 has to be dissolved in an oil. And what you do is you get it, like this is MC2 oil. Normally it's clear as water. And you should see it turns in a purple color. That's C60 Purple Power, our brand name. And it should be clear too. If your C60 is like black as ink, that's one of those fraudsters that are selling you basically activated charcoal in an oil, and you're paying, C60 prices for charcoal that you got out of the fireplace. So just have to be careful on that. And things like histamines. They found in C60 a moderated release of histamines from human mast cells in the test tube. They took that to animal studies. They gave animals like an allergen that usually causes anaphylactic shock. Animals that had the C60 didn't go into anaphylactic shock versus the controls that, basically kicked the bucket. And also neuroprotective effects. They found that C60 applied topically, over human skin cells in the test tube. And C60, they didn't get sun damaged by UV radiation, whereas the others did. Of course, I still recommend some skin protective products are not so good for you. And that's way beyond the thing, but you should make research carefully before you apply sunscreens, because some are not very good at all, especially ones with nanoparticles of titanium dioxide. You don't want to put those on your skin. So C60 can help protect that. If you're going to go out in a slot of sun, you do need a skin protector besides C60. But it does that. And also neuroprotective effects, that's its probably greatest thing. Human nerve cells, the test tube, they get C60, the other didn't. They expose them to really nasty toxins. The skin, those ones with C60 aren't damaged, the other ones aren't. And the thing, another thing, C60 kind of covers all of those incidental things you're going to run into, no matter how good you are. No matter, you purify your water, you eat perfectly healthy, you do all that stuff. Well, you drive by the 5G. And that's also another thing. One of the things is the 5G stuff, which is, cooking you can actually get little bags you can put your phone in. Yeah. And that will prevent radiation getting out. But one of the things about 5G antennas is they actually target you as you drive. So they target your phone. So they'll be zapping at your phone. They're a lot of them are directional. That saves energy and increases things. So if you got a phone on you, you're walking by 5G, it's zapping you. You're zapping your phone, and if you're nearby, but if you put it in one of those little bags, the antenna doesn't even know you're there, and you don't get zapped. So that's what C60 covers, all these little things. It's also a great hangover cure. You drink a little bit before drinking and then a little after, though I don't encourage that, but that does do that job.
Cool. I'm committed to using it for a full year to see how it goes with me personally. I'm going to do a couple things with it. Well, one, take it orally. I'm kind of up to taking around a tablespoon right now, just because I'm athletic and moving quite a bit. Two, I just bought some DMSO, which is a solvent, and I'm going to put the C60 and DMSO on my right knee, which has some pretty serious arthritis in it from 6 surgeries. So looking to regenerate that. So
we've had customers do that, and they've had great results. They did it all. They came on their own. That DMSO just pulls the C60 and oil right into the.
Yeah, so it's a way to get it into the joint. Okay, so DMSO, C60. And then my third thing is I was looking at some research papers in prep for this, and I found that C60, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, like it absorbs actually in the infrared band. Is this known? Is this?
It absorbs some and probably vibrates. It's mostly UV band. That's what happens.
That's why.
It has a variety of bands. It does absorb in the infrared band.
Because I was actually thinking, I don't know if this would be a bad idea, but like of actually putting some infrared light on it and then taking it. So I have no idea if that would have any benefit or if it actually could potentially degrade it. But I was just kind of getting a little experimental.
No, it would not degrade it. C60 will not be degraded. That's why the thing is found in outer space. Outer space is full of really.
Oh, for sure. The sun's kicking off plenty of near and mid-far infrared.
Brains everywhere. C60 will not decay or hard in your body. That's not going to happen. But no, I also do deep infrared therapy. And I have found that, like 880 nanometers and 630, and there's a whole bunch of those infrared frequencies. They do amazing things because they could penetrate way past your skin, past the bone, deep into your brain or deep into your joints. And they bring great healing benefits to people. So if you have a little bit of joint problems they've actually gotten rid of Alzheimer's completely by, deep infrared stimulation of the brain, like at the 830 to 880 levels. And they actually sell a helmet for $7,000 that does it, but 2 30-minute treatments a day. So that's, people should explore infrared therapies because they're...
Yeah, it pairs well in the mitochondria, the blood flow, these similar pathways. So that's a good stack. Well, this was awesome. I appreciate you coming on and sharing so much about like the science. And like, I'm sure if someone's still listening to this, they're probably really excited about this. So again, it's shopc60.com, and we'll have some links in the show notes specifically for fit fathers and fit mothers who want to check that out. And also, again, can you give us the name of that nonprofit if people want to see the animal studies too, that one website?
It's oneisk60.org.
Cool.
And it'll have like the study, a synopsis, a link to the study and a synopsis, and it sets them into different categories. So you can kind of learn about C60 and what is beneficial types of C60 and what, is going to do any good for you.
Nice. Well, Ken, thank you for coming on. I appreciate your expertise and you being a champion for this amazing compound, and everyone listening, thanks for tuning in to today's episode.